Great. Okay, and now everybody's muting themselves and we're diving in. All right.
Awesome. So now that I've said everything brilliant that you ever need to hear, just kidding. For those of you watching the recording, I haven't said a thing yet. The only other thing that I wanted to add before I launch into my whole life story, blah, 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 is please interrupt me. Like, I want this to be a conversation. Anytime you have a question, just like throw yourself off mute and say hello. And yeah, so my name is Sally Cade Holmes. Sally Cade is a double name. It's very tricky. It takes people a long time to figure out. That's why I care a lot about getting people's names right. I am originally from South Carolina, which is probably why I have two names that act as one, because they like to give you a lot of names in the South. I grew up in a small rural town that, you know, the biggest city was Greenville, which has an airport. It's about 30 minutes from where I grew up. And I started doing community theater when I was a kid. I saw a production of, I think it was a children's theater production of The Little Mermaid that like rocked my world. I distinctly remember like it was yesterday. There was this moment of stagecraft where a ship like came over the audience, and I was like, yes, this is it. This is the coolest thing I've ever experienced. I must be a part of it. So then I started doing community theater when I was, you know, I guess in elementary school. Not really thinking it was, you know, I was really passionate about it, but I didn't think it was a career path. And I continued doing theater, acting, but in my community theater, the director was very much like, yeah, if you're going to be on stage, you also have to sweep the stage. So I got a little sense of doing everything. And that's the first time I understood what a stage manager did. I started doing theater at the kind of like big time children's theater nearby that was in the neighboring city. So it was a big deal. That's actually where I learned what a stage manager did, when I was playing the golden harp in Jack and the Beanstalk, and I lost my voice completely. And I came up with this brilliant idea. I was like, okay, I'm going to go out. I am super hoarse, but I'm going to do the whole thing sounding super hoarse, and except this one high note. I had a plant in the orchestra pit, and I was like, she'll hit the high note and it'll be like a miraculous, like I'll pretend it was this miraculous thing. So I did all of this without telling the stage manager, and I got in trouble. So that's where I learned what stage managers do and how very important they are. So I did community theater, I did children's theater, I did high school theater, all of the things. I did a little bit of everything. And when it came time to start looking at colleges, my high school theater teacher was like, this might be something to pursue. And I had already kind of decided I wanted to. And I was very, very lucky that my parents supported me in this. Like, I think that they probably questioned it, but some line of logic in my mom's head was like, if they study, my sister also studied theater, if they study theater, then they can pretend to be anything. I was like, okay, that's sure, whatever it takes. So I did the whole audition for undergrad institutions. I was torn between, you know, the whole BFA, like conservatory versus liberal arts. And for a little while I was like, BFA musical theater, that's what I need. And then kind of as I was exploring, I realized that these variety of interests that I've cultivated actually led me towards a more liberal arts path. So I found this school called the University of Evansville in Indiana, and they had a program called theater generalism, which, to be honest, I really wanted to be in the acting program, but they were like, no, you're not going to be in the acting program, but we have this other line of study that we think might interest you. To this day, I think they were like, you have pretty good test scores and we just want you to come here so you can do this. So I went there as a theater generalist, which was a fascinating experience because I kind of felt like, because I was studying everything, I didn't fit into any path, and there was some tension there. Hindsight, it was the best decision I could have made because it made me a producer, and I didn't know it at the time. at the time I was like, I just want to be in shows. I just want to take voice lessons. I just want to blah, blah, blah. And in reality, I was learning skills that paid off a lot. So in college, I performed, I directed, I was a dramaturg, I was a TA for our theater history class. I minored in religious studies because, you know, what else is more secure than theater? Studying religion. But I saw, because of this liberal arts degree, I saw a really interesting tie-in between theater and religion, especially in ancient days, and storytelling and how it's all tied together. And I found that really fascinating. So, you know, it made sense to me. It still makes sense to me. So 4 years at the University of Evansville, I loved it. My sister also went there. I made some of my best friends there. Like I have another class that I'm teaching after this. And then after that, I have a happy hour with my college friends. So those people are still very much in my life. And that's a theme that you'll hear throughout my story is it's all about relationships that you're creating right now and that you will create in the next few years. Because those are like your foundational people and your foundational collaborators that even if you're not working together on a daily basis, you can run things by them. You can talk to them. You can trust them as artistic minds, as collaborators. Oh, hi, someone just joined us. Hi, Oscar. No, you're good. Will you tell me your name, your pronouns, and what emphasis you like in theater, acting, directing?
Oscar, he, him, and I like acting as an emphasis.
Very cool. Very cool. I'm just going to reiterate, y'all jump in with questions because I will talk. So 4 years at the University of Evansville, and then I auditioned for grad schools because the University of Evansville was like, they basically prepared you to go to graduate school. What I say is they teach you to act with your mind, but not with your full body. And I feel like they were like, yes, you'll learn that somewhere else. So I thought I wanted to be an actor still. I auditioned for grad schools. I did not get into any. So I decided I would move to New York with, my friends. Some of my friends were there, and I always loved it in New York. I had visited there a couple of times growing up. I wasn't scared at all of it. I was just like, great, this is what we're going to do. And I moved there on a Friday the 13th with a one-way ticket. And I will never forget my mom being like, what am I doing? Like putting her on a flight to New York City on a Friday the 13th. Anyway, so I moved to New York. I got bed bugs within the first month. It takes like a year to figure out the trains. So there are all these human elements that are coming at you when you make a big life change like this. And I just kind of dealt with all that. At the same time, I was seeing a lot of theater. I was faced with this decision. I applied for an internship that was an unpaid internship at a reputable theater in the city. And I had that opportunity because I got it. I was like, oh my gosh. And then I had another opportunity to be an assistant director on a children's show with a friend of mine, and it paid a little bit. So I was like, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do the one that pays. And come to find out, like, I've worked with this guy several times since. Like, I've met people in that gig. I met so many people that continue to be in my life. So that was my first like professional gig in the city, and I had several survival jobs. One of them was as an HR. Well, I started as a temp, like office person, and I distinctly remember I was paid hourly, so I would shred paper very slowly. I also like watched miniseries on my phone. I do as I say, not as I do. Do not do that. But that gig, because I was doing good work, that gig turned into, I was the assistant HR manager for a little while at this company. And then the HR director went on maternity leave. And then all of a sudden I was the interim HR director. And I felt myself like like going away, spending a lot of time at my day job and not as much time doing theater. And at the same time, I had started a theater company with 4 of my friends from undergrad, who one was a scenic designer, one was a lighting designer, one was a costume designer, and then an actor friend and me. And at the time I thought I wanted to be an actor. And we were seeing all of this off Broadway, so small theater work. And we were just kind of disappointed in the production values of it. So we decided that our mission as a Reverb Theater Group would be to be really scrappy and do really beautiful productions on a shoestring budget, but like not skimp on costumes, scenic, lights. Like we wanted to make something beautiful visually, but also something affordable that we could afford. So I was doing that, had this day job. Doing the theater made me realize that producing is actually a thing that I love, because the first show that we did, there wasn't really a role for me in it. And everybody else was working like on the show. Like my scenic designer collaborator was a scenic designer, lighting design, blah, blah, blah. And the opening night, I had this kind of like realization / existential crisis where I was like, I can't touch anything on this show that I have had a direct hand in. And my scenic designer friend was like, psh, 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 be quiet. None of this would have happened if you hadn't made it happen. And I was like, oh, that's what a producer does. And I think that's what I'm good at. So at that point, I was like, okay, day job, like, I think I need to go figure out how to do this. So bye. I still had other day jobs. You just always have to have a million things going on. But this one very particular one where I was probably a liability to the company because I had a liberal arts degree in theater and religious studies and was managing the human resources for this internet marketing company. I was like, thank you, goodbye. And I ended up going to graduate school for a little while for arts administration in Boston. And this is when I thought I wanted to be a nonprofit artistic director, because that was the only path that I saw for producers. I was like, okay, cool. So you want to be a producer? You go to a nonprofit, you become an associate artistic director, and then you become an artistic director. And that felt like the only path. So went to Boston for about 1.5 years, got an internship at the Williamstown Theater Festival in the artistic team department, was very much in the right place at the right time, in that the first summer I was there, it was with an artistic director and a producer who I became very close to. And at the end of that summer, the artistic director announced that she was leaving, and there was going to be a summer between when she left and the new artistic director took over. So the producer, who was my other boss, brought me on as his associate for a second summer so that he didn't have to do 2 jobs alone, basically. And that is the summer that a musical called The Visit was doing its out-of-town tryout at Williamstown Theater Festival. And that is where I met who would become my boss and mentor for the next 5 years, who was the lead producer of The White Chip in New York, Tom Curtihy, who's like a wonderful human and just the best. So he was trying to work the copy machine at Williamstown Theater Festival. And I was like, this man is struggling. So I just went out and helped him. And I guess I was charming. So he remembered me. And when I got back, so then I stopped grad school. Like I was just like, okay, cool. I think my career is going really well. So I'm going to stop that for a second. And I moved back to New York, and I asked Tom out to coffee. He remembered me. So he said yes. And at that coffee, I bought his coffee, by the way, which I felt like was a bold move, but a good move. And at that coffee date, he offered me a job. And that is where I was for 5 years at Tom Curtihy Productions. And he recognized my ambition and the fact that I wanted to be a producer. And I saw this commercial world. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a fascinating way to produce art, in that at a nonprofit, it has to be mission focused. So your season has to tie back to the mission of the organization, and any ticket sales have to go back to funding the institution, of course. Like, that's how it should be. That's why these nonprofits have the tax status they do. It makes perfect sense. It's also very, very hard. In the commercial world, you have these companies where it's one company for one piece of art. So Hadestown, which I worked on, so Hadestown LLC is Hadestown. And that is, to me, I found a lot of artistic freedom and a lot of artistic excitement in the idea that I would raise money for investors for this one show. And that all of my energy would go into this one show rather than having to keep like an institution afloat. I had no idea that was an option until I was in grad school. So I'm very thankful. I was in Tom's office. I learned all about this. He saw my passion for it. He allowed me the opportunity to raise money for some of these shows. So I worked on Broadway in two capacities. I was Tom's associate producer on these shows. He was the lead producer and I was his associate, which meant basically if he had to be in like 1,000 places, I would take 8 of them. You know what I mean? We would tag team, and I would be his voice in the room. So in addition to being his associate, I was a co-producer, which meant that I was afforded the right to raise money and also have my name on the show. So I started getting Broadway credits, which is how you develop a reputation. And my first Broadway credit was Anastasia, which I started the Facebook group in college, Why is Anastasia Not a Broadway Musical? So it was a very special moment for me and all my college friends. So I did Anastasia. And then what else? What did we do after that? I worked on The Visit, which transferred to Broadway after Williamstown. I was not a producer on that, but I was Tom's associate on it. I was his associate on It's Only a Play, which was a comedy with a star-studded cast. Oh my gosh.
I am currently reading that play. I'm doing a Terrence McNally study right now. So I'm reading that play right now.
That's amazing.
Crazy.
Oh my gosh. I have a whole list of plays you should read of Terrence's, because Tom Curdy, he was married to Terrence McNally.
Oh.
So Terrence is a dear friend.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Miss him very much. He passed away a few weeks ago. But so did It's Only a Play, did Anastasia, did The Visit, and then I think was the next one Frankie and Johnny, I guess it was. So I was both a producer and Tom's associate on that, as well as Hadestown, which, it's wild that I have a Tony Award, but I mean, I am pinching myself because of that whole situation. I was a fan of that show since 2008 when it was a concept album. So the opportunity to be a part of that and to tell Tom, when he took that first meeting on Hadestown, I was like, you have to, you have to. So to be a part of the fabric of that was really exciting. I also, outside of Tom Curdy Productions, did a show called Puffs, which is basically, people are nodding. People know Puffs. So it's all 7 years of a certain boy wizard's time at a certain school of wizardry, but from the perspective of the Puffs. And so my friend from college directed that. And I had just come off of Anastasia, and as Tom's associate, I had taken the merchandise side of things, communicating with the merchandise company on Anastasia. And when I came on as a co-producer of Puffs, I was talking about how fascinated I was in this world of merchandise. And the lead producers were like, we're not all that happy with our merchandise person. Can you help us out? And I was like, absolutely, yes, I'll figure it out. So I ended up running the merchandise operation for Puffs, which has been an incredibly, and it's been an incredible opportunity to learn. And I'm hoping an opportunity to create a business, because it's very difficult to be a commercial producer and only have that piece of cash flow because that is so volatile. So you kind of need other streams of income in order to survive as a commercial producer. So I have this merch company now. So I did Puffs, and then I'm a producer on Little Shop of Horrors off Broadway. And I think that's all of them. So in January, after 5 years of working with Tom, I said, I actually technically wasn't a producer on The White Chip, but I was the producer on it. I wasn't billed, but I was the point of contact from our office. And that was right before I left TKP. But at the end of last year, I was like, you know what? I think I've hit the ceiling of what I can do here. And Tom, as the amazing mentor he is, was like, yeah, go. It's time for you to go, like, figure this out and fly, and has been one of my biggest supporters and friends and mentors on this journey of going out on my own. And now I'm developing my own stuff. I am producing some galas. I am producing a lot of, I consult with organizations. So like there's an organization called Play on Shakespeare that has done translations of all 39 plays attributed to Shakespeare, but in slightly more modern English, but keeping the rhythm, keeping the intention, but only editing like jokes that there is no way that we can fathom. And the poor actors in Shakespeare having to work so hard. Like, what if they didn't have to work that hard? What if the language actually just fell on our ears in a way that was more understandable? So working with them we produced a festival, and I do a bunch of stuff with them. And then developing new work. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Okay, I have talked for so long. You guys come at me with some questions. That's where I am right now. Yeah, who has a question? Dylan, did I see your hand go up?
Yeah. I don't know if this question makes sense, but since you went into theater journalism, would you say that is more, I don't know, admirable, when getting jobs, because you know more ranges of different stuff?
I would say that it's not necessarily generalism, but it was the liberal arts nature of my degree that allows me to kind of wrap my head around, because I just question everything, you know what I mean? Whereas, I love my colleagues that went to a conservatory, because there's no way I could have done that. And they're all spectacular human beings. But they have a very focused view of things, whereas my view is a little more expansive in that, I feel like I see how what the marketing team is doing is artistic. I'm like, and I see how that connects to what's going on stage. So in that way, the liberal arts nature of my degree, I think, helped me get gigs. The other tricky thing to wrap your head around in this industry is that jobs are weird. I fell into this job, and it started as a part-time gig while I had other part-time gigs. And then as Tom's company grew, I was able to have a full-time job there. There is so much risk involved. And I struggle because I recognize how my privilege, because I where I'm from, who I am, afforded me a lot of opportunities. And now it's trying to figure out okay, so if I couldn't have taken that unpaid internship at Williamstown Theater Festival, how can I help people who couldn't do that get to where I am now? But it is a lot of risk, and it's a lot of who you know, and it's a lot of keeping those relationships very close.
Thank you.
Great question, Dylan.
Thanks.
Raymond, you got a question?
Yes, I did. Okay, so how much do you feel like you've learned from experience versus school? I mean, you learn as you grow and develop in this industry so much. How much have you learned, from experience? I know that's kind of a broad-ended question, but
No, I totally hear you. And I was teaching another class, And people kept being like, well, what did you major in? Like, what, and does that matter?
Yeah.
And I took an informal poll of my Instagram followers who work in the theater. And I was like, hey, if you work in theater, but didn't major in theater, what did you major in? And there were things from economics to photography, like all of these things. All of that to say is most of what I have learned has been in actual practice, which could also mean like your extracurricular activities and the stuff that you do outside of your schoolwork.
Right.
That said, my like formal training has helped me, like I'm able to have a conversation with artists because I understand how to read a play and I understand how to dramaturgically dissect it. And I understand, how to have a conversation with a scenic designer. I will say that is something that being a generalist has been so important for, is like talking about visual language in a way that I think directors are really good at and designers are really good at, but it's very rare for a producer to have that skill. I feel like the producer comes in and is like, why is that costume that color? And it's like, okay, no, that's not the question. The question is like, let's talk about, you know, what your thought process was with this color. It's not like it's willy-nilly, you know. So a little bit of both.
Right.
But really, I feel like what's gotten me ahead is like street smarts, social skills, my connections, and things that are hard to teach in a classroom. Yeah. But supported by things that I've learned in a classroom.
Because one thing I'm considering is going into a 3-year program at a conservatory and going and meeting people. And I really enjoyed it because I did a summer program with this conservatory in New York, and I really enjoyed it. Was the Stella Adler studio. And so I really enjoyed that. And that's one of my options for my future education. And then,
No, finish your thought.
Oh, wait, but that leads me on to my next question. So what do you look for in a collaboration with other artists, and talking about, you know, what is something that you look for when you want to collaborate with someone?
Sure. I want to collaborate with good people. Like you can come into an audition room. So you can come into an audition room and knock it out of the park. But if I get a vibe from you that is put offish or like not genuine, I'm going to hesitate. Right. It is all about being an authentic, genuine, true to yourself person. And that's who I want to work with. Like other producers may say something different. But truly, I will give an example. I was about to go into an audition for a musical in development. And this woman who was auditioning had no idea I was on the producing team. And it was a play that required actor musicians. So she was trying to warm up her violin in the hallway of the rehearsal studio. And the attendant from the rehearsal studio was like, ma'am, please don't do that. Like, we have other people in other studios, like blah, 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 blah. And she was so rude to that attendant that when she came in to do her audition, I was automatically like, no, she's mean. She's a mean person. That attendant was just trying to do her job. Like, anyway, so that's that. The other piece, when you said Stella Adler, I will say, going to school in New York versus going to school anywhere else, I feel like is very different. And I feel like you learn so much of the street smarts by just being in New York, and you already have a leg up in terms of like, I had to spend a year it took a lot of energy for me to get from point A to point B because I was getting used to this vibe.
Well, I loved it because my bed was 2 by 5 feet long. I had an hour-long subway trip into the city every day. I was gone dawn till dusk, or is that it? Dawn till dusk? Dusk till dawn? Okay, anyway, but I loved it, and I really liked that. So that's just something that getting the vibe of the city and meeting people is something. And every time I ask people, it's like, oh, it's because I got this job because I knew this person, and this led to this by saying yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Getting to know people.
Thank you so much.
Totally.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So when you made the decision to move yourself to New York, I guess this is kind of a general question. I don't know how much of a planner you are. I'm just a very like plan-based person, and so I feel like, I mean, like my dream is also to eventually live in New York, and I feel like when it comes time for me to actually consider that as an option, I'll like stop myself by wondering if I'm like prematurely moving. So I was wondering what your thought process was when you made that decision for yourself.
So first of all, by being aware of that, you're already miles ahead of other people, right? Like by even talking about the fact that that is a thing about you that you're worried will get in your way, like now you have named it and you can think about it. No, so I took a leap. No, I didn't plan. I knew my friends had a couch for me to sleep on for a couple of months, and that is the couch that got bed bugs, and then I moved very quickly. So like I am a planner, but I was able to take that leap. And that just was kind of based on like where I was in my life, because I hadn't gotten into any grad schools. I was just out of college. I was in this moment of transition, and it just made sense. And I also just want to preface everything I'm saying, preface or post-fist, whatever. All advice is autobiographical. So like what has worked for me might not work for you. And that is okay. That is, I think the same thing is true of shows. Like every path is different, you know, like the development path for a show is different. The development path for a career is different. Like, you know yourself, you obviously know this about yourself. So then maybe that means you do need more of a plan before you move to New York, and that's totally okay. And also, if you don't move to New York, that's cool too. Like, yeah.
Okay,
Great question.
awesome. Thank you.
Cool.
I have a question from one of our students who couldn't make it, but is wondering how much of producing is creative versus financial?
Ooh, that is a great question. So it depends on where you are on the producing scale. So the producing team. So in the world of producing, you have lead producers who are like at the top. They are the ones who are helping gather the creative team. They are the ones who are like on Hadestown, for instance, one of the producers is the one who is like, Rachel Chapkin, you should talk to Aeneas. Like that was a pairing that the producers made. That is super, super, super creative and dramaturgical. They also have to find the people to raise the money / they have to raise the money. So I'd say lead producers, depending on where you are in the process of a musical, it's probably 50-50. Like, but when you're in Tech Week, it's going to be all creative because the money's already raised. So, but when you are about to go into rehearsals, it's going to be about the money. So I'd say it's 50-50, but it fluctuates based on the trajectory and timeline of the project. Then there are the co-producers, which are underneath the lead producers, who are mostly money people. So they may have an opportunity to contribute notes through the lead producers, but then the lead producers are the ones who decide what gets to the artists. And that's a mechanism of, you know, because Broadway shows are so expensive, you have to have a lot of people raising money. And you can't have a lot of people giving notes to the artists because that is bad. I encourage you guys to all look at, when you open a playbill, look at every single name that's listed on the title page, and even in the pages behind like the bios. All of those people have jobs, are working on this show. Like, it is huge. And if we had multiple sessions, my favorite thing is to walk through a title page and tell people exactly what each person does. But the lead producers are usually at the top of the producing billing block, and the co-producers are underneath them. That's how you can tell who's who. But great question from person who's not here. Did I answer it? I think I did.
No, that was great.
Okay.
That was great.
Yeah. All right, friends, we have time for a couple more questions if you have them. If not, if I've answered everything.
I have another one, but I don't want to speak over someone. Oh, never mind. Rourke does. Yeah, Rourke, go.
Rourke,
and
and
we'll
then
come back to
Anya.
you, Anya.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know nothing about producing. So, like, what does your process look like from beginning to end? And, like, what process of making a show do you come into as the producer?
It is different on every show. So there is no one path. I will say, this is how I've explained it to my parents, and it seemed to work. The producer is like the CEO of a company. So like the producer is not in every decision that gets made. The producer is guiding the ship, and they bring on a team that they trust to make the decisions that need to happen. And then when it comes to like messaging, when it comes to advertising, when it comes to big artistic decisions, when it comes to big budgetary decisions, the producer is going to weigh in and have the final say. But yeah, if you look at a show like a company, the producer is like the CEO or the co-CEOs. And when I say every show is different, the way shows are made are different, right? So like sometimes artists have an idea and then they'll shop it around to find producers. Sometimes I read a book that I'm like, this would be a great musical. So I approach the artists. And in that way, my role is very different than if an artist comes to me and is like, will you produce this? So yeah, everyone is different, like the CEO. Anya.
So I know you talked briefly about it earlier, but I would love to get further input on, okay, I just never stop thinking about college, and there's like this huge ongoing question in like people who want to study theater in college of like, do you go with an affordable option of like staying in state, or do you like risk everything and like go to New York where like at the schools that have so much reputation? And I know you talked about how like studying in New York is useful because then you have that leg up of understanding the city itself. But from an education point of view and like a financial point of view and a career point of view, what's your view?
There is no one. I mean, like I went to school in rural Indiana. I have a Tony Award. Like, you know what I mean? Like I have friends who have gone to school in tiny towns. I have friends that have gone to school in Alaska. I have you know what I mean? Like it is all about the hustle and it's what you do with it, right? Like if you get to New York or if you get to whatever city you're going to and you infiltrate the theater scene by going to shows every night, by, you know, like volunteering at theater companies that you appreciate and like their work, like that's how you get in. At a certain point, it doesn't matter where you go to school as long as you're willing to put in the time and effort.
Got you. Okay, awesome.
And if I could, so I have to head out very soon, friends, but if I can leave you with one thing, if you are interested in going into this as a profession, learn as much about what's currently happening as possible. If you are not subscribed to the Broadway Briefing, you should be. Like the Broadway Briefing, Playbill, the New York Times Theater section, like those are the ways that if you don't go to school in New York, you can still learn the names and learn the players so that you can get here or whatever city you want to go to and pick up like quickly. You guys, thank you so much. I'm sorry I have to leave so soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for talking with us.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If y'all have any questions or if you are ever in New York and want to hang out, Jasmine has my email address. You can follow me on Instagram, all of those things. I'm around.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Next
Thank you.
class.
Bye.
Awesome.